Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, Lebanon, and parts of Jordan and Syria. It was to Canaan from present-day Iraq that Abraham traveled in search of the promised land. If you take, time and read out the Bible. Although Jews and Canaanites had the same root in antiquity, we can learn that from studying verse 6 to 20 of Genesis chapter 10. We find that Canaan was a descendant of Noah, the son of Ham. And so the Canaanites, in the period leading up to Jesus' birth, were a polytheistic people. What this means is that they were worshipping several gods. Unlike the Jews who had a monotheistic nature, they worshipped Yahweh only. So one Canaanite god was even named El Elyon, which translates as God Most High. We find that when Abraham met Melchizedek, a priest of Salem, which we now call Jerusalem, Melchizedek did bless Abraham. If you read Genesis chapter 14, from verse 18 to 20, he did bless him in the name of God Most High. And so, in his response to this, we see that Abraham equated the God Most High to Yahweh, his own God. Okay, so there's some sort of link. However, that's not what we're looking at tonight. We're trying to see if the gospel of Christ is actually meant for a particular set of people or for the whole world. Because if in this context, Christ did acknowledge that he wasn't sent to the Canaanites, that he was actually sent to the lost sheep of Israel. How can we say, "Go ye therefore and teach all nations," knowing fully well that it's not just the Jews who occupied all nations? So the sake of time, we started this. So back to our story. Matthew chapter 15 to verse 28, from verse 21 to 28. We find that the Canaanite culture had declined considerably by Jesus' time, probably due to wars, conquest, and maybe the expansion of the Jewish culture in the area. In Matthew chapter 15, where we just read, I'm laying emphasis on verse 21 to 28, we find that Jesus leaves the area of Galilee. He'd been preaching around the area of Galilee, and so at some point he felt that he had to take a break, and so he moved towards Tyre, and in order, apparently, to take a break, okay? So Tyre was an important Canaanite seaport. Today, it is a popular tourist center in Lebanon. If you travel to Lebanon, ask the Lebanese around you. It's a tourist center. You actually want to go there. So the Canaanite woman knows about Jesus from what she's heard. There's this link from Tyre to Nazareth. It was more like only about 2 days, brisk walk apart, not too far from each other. So Jesus encounters a desperate and noisy woman. As much as he tries to send her away, she keeps shouting after him, "Oh, you have to help me." She would just stop crying out. She wants to take a no for an answer. And her urgent appeal challenges Jesus' deep-rooted sense of calling. So the usual step now is quite clear. This woman is a Canaanite. The Bible tells us that in verse 22. Read the Bible very well. Matthew chapter 15, go to verse 22. I'm not making that up. So her ancestors are the indigenous residents of Canaan. That's an established fact. So she's clearly a Gentile. Now Jesus Christ was preaching and after preaching to the Jews. So as a Gentile, she was an outsider to the Jewish community. But her situation is desperate. From what we read in that verse, her child is demon-possessed and was suffering terribly. And Jesus is a healer. So you see what she kept crying out. So she reaches out across barriers of race and religion. It doesn't matter how many gods, our race worship. She just knew that this man, Jesus, is a healer, and he just had to tend to her. So that makes her begin to implore Jesus for help. Now, in the story, there are 4 stages of verbal exchanges that I'd like us to really consider now. The first stage, we find the woman addressing Jesus and begging him for mercy. Her Her need is obvious, and our words demonstrate deep faith. Okay? By calling Jesus Son of David, she acknowledges him as a Jewish Messiah. And by addressing him as Lord, she expresses her faith in him, but then Jesus says nothing. Now let's move on to stage 2. So the woman is undeterred. She continues shouting until Jesus' disciples beg him to just send her away. But then Jesus didn't do that. Because for Jesus, this is a divine calling. Jesus had been sent, he had been sent by God only to the lost sheep of Israel. And he did say this, but that this woman is not a Jew. So she doesn't qualify to receive healing from him. Wow. Now stage 3. Jesus feels she isn't qualified, and so he makes that known to her. But then this woman does a full body appeal and kneels before Jesus. Now at that time, even up to this time, kneeling on your knees was a stance, and it's still a stance and language of worship. So she worships Jesus. That's some extent of faith. Now she worships Jesus on her knees and cries out, Lord, help me. Wow. Now Jesus responds with harsh words. You're wondering, yeah, it's in the Bible. I mean, those are quite harsh words. So Jesus responds and says, hey, woman, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. You will confirm that in verse 26 of Matthew chapter 15. Those are the words of Jesus to the woman. Now that takes us to stage 4 of the Bible verse. Now, having said that, this woman remains thirsty. So Jesus is charged down, please, for 3 times then. But she refuses to give up. So she debates Jesus on his own terms. When he says, I can't start tossing the bread that belongs to children, toss it at the dogs. David says, yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from your master's table. I'm not saying that it is wrong, it is improper to give the food that belongs to children to the dogs. But I need you, Lord Jesus, to understand that even dogs are able to eat from the crumbs that fall from their master's table. So, allow me partake of this grace. Wow. So when she does this, Lord have mercy. At that instant, the Bible records that at that instant, Jesus responded by saying, woman, great is thy faith. But let it be unto you, even as thou wilt. And that's how the daughter received the healing right there. Now, I would even try to go into 5th level here. Let's save that for another minute. But then what we're looking at tonight is what just happened in that verse shows that the Gentiles can also receive the blessings of God's kingdom. And they do. That's the truth. It's a plain fact. The healing ministry of Jesus is for all humans, be it Gentile, be it Jews, be it African, be it British. Come on. And that's why the Great Commission is that we go out there and preach the kingdom, preach the gospel to every nation. So, back to our story. Our daughter became healed from that very harm, according to the Bible story. Here we see Jesus expand his vision and extend his healing ministry to a Canaanite woman. At that time, it was an abomination for a Jewish person to even have a conversation with a Canaanite. Even the Canaanites will not have anything to do with Jews. But then, here we find Jesus. And the controversy surrounding his ministry at that time. Even the Jewish people were looking for ways to pull him down. So Jesus did not raise a mighty army to drive out the Romans and rebuild Jerusalem as a vigorous capital to worship Yahweh. No. He did not even free the people from the political subjugation or their poverty. Instead, he freed individuals from their